Outside the towering gates of the Waiyan kingdom, the villagers gathered, peeking nervously from behind wooden stalls and open windows. Mothers clutched their children tightly. Farmers paused mid-harvest. Merchants abandoned their trade. The army marched forward, steel glinting in the morning light. At the front of the battalion were 3 riders, Kyung-hoon, Tae-jin, and Min-suk, their faces grim and unflinching. Beyond the wall, waiting like a vulture perched on a throne, sat Commander Yo, dressed in black armor with the sun catching on his silver-lined cape. His piercing eyes scanned the Waiyan gates with a smirk of superiority. Behind him stood the Ean Empire's forces, a sea of armor and spears that stretched to the horizon. Kyung-hoon, now face to face with Commander Yo, pulled at the reins of his horse and stared him down. And then Yo spoke. "I don't wish for war, Your Majesty," he said coolly. "I come on behalf of my emperor. All we want is what we've always taken, tribute from your kingdom. Slaves." It was quiet and convenient, until you arrested Jin-suk. Kyung-hoon's jaw tightened. His voice, though low, cracked like thunder. "You mean to tell me you're here demanding I hand over my people into chains? And you think I'll comply?" Commander Yo shrugged. "Your people helped build our farms, our roads, our empire. Without them, we slow. So yes, I expect cooperation." Fury danced in Kyung-hoon's eyes. He shifted in his saddle, ready to leap from his horse and attack, but Tae-jin grabbed his arm. "Not now," Tae-jin whispered urgently. "Don't give him what he wants." But the restraint in Kyung-hoon's voice was hanging by a thread. "You dare stand on my land, and talk about my people like livestock," he spat. "You have no soul." Commander Yo grinned. "I have vision. Something you lack. You have a kingdom on the brink of collapse. A childless palace. A broken army. You can't win this. So be smart. Come to an arrangement." But Kyung-hoon sat up straighter in his saddle, eyes burning. "I'd rather watch my kingdom burn to the ground, than hand it over to monsters like you." For a moment, the world went still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Yo's smile faded. "Then so be it," he said coldly. With one signal from Commander Yo, the air turned black with arrows. The sky was silent for half a second, and then came the screaming. Kyung-hoon's men fell one by one as the Ean army's surprise attack rained down on them without mercy. "Ambush! Shields up! Retreat!" Kyung-hoon shouted, his voice hoarse and furious. Everything was chaos. Tae-jin's eyes widened in horror as several soldiers around them were struck down. "We need to get inside," he shouted, panicked. "We can't survive this. Fall back." Min-suk yelled, waving his sword. "To the gates. Close the gates, now." With agonizing effort, Kyung-hoon and his remaining men managed to retreat into the kingdom's walls. The iron gates slammed shut, echoing like a war drum. But there was no time to rest. The Ean army was already at the gates, pounding, pushing, trying to break through like a raging storm. Inside, chaos spread like wildfire. "Where is the rest of our army?" Tae-jin demanded, breathing heavily. "Half our soldiers are still unaccounted for." And then, it hit Kyung-hoon like a bolt of lightning. Sungmin. His face went stiff with realization. Of course. He's kept them. But there was no time to dwell. The walls shook violently. Bombs from the Ean side exploded at the base of the wall, making the very foundation tremble. "Hold the gates!" Kyung-hoon barked. "Don't let them through. Archers! To the walls!" From the top of the kingdom walls, Waiyan's archers rose, taking position in perfect formation. They fired. Arrows rained down like divine justice. Ean soldiers dropped. The front line broke. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like the defense might hold. But the Yin army wasn't slowing down. Their commanders pushed them harder, and their own siege weapons and firebombs retaliated, slamming into the stone wall with bone-shaking force. More bombs! Kyung-hoon shouted. Burn their siege line. Explosives were hurled from the towers, hitting enemy catapults, smashing carts, blowing infantry into the air. The battlefield was a nightmare of smoke, screams, and falling debris. But the Yin army still came. Commander Yul sat atop his horse, watching like a devil on a throne. Break the wall, he growled to his second-in-command. Let them drown in fear. And the Yin army did exactly that. With each hit, the stone wall cracked. With each push, the gates trembled. Meanwhile, deep beneath the surface of Hwaiyan, in a secret underground chamber, the tension was thick, almost suffocating. Sungmin, gaunt and pale from illness, stood before 200,000 soldiers. They had been waiting in silence, just as Sungmin instructed. His plan was simple: let the Yin and Hwaiyan destroy each other. Once both sides were exhausted and broken, they would emerge from the shadows and claim the kingdom without lifting more than a sword. But that patience was beginning to crack. Whispers grew louder in the chamber. Some men spoke with guilt, others with grief. Their fellow soldiers, brothers in arms, were up there on the surface, fighting for the kingdom, defending the very people they all once swore to protect. General Hong Jae finally stepped forward. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of his inner turmoil. Our enemy was King Jang, he said. Not Kyung-hoon. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Hong Jae continued, we hated King Jang for good reason. He betrayed the throne, stole power, and ruined what was left of the old dynasty. But Kyung-hoon, he's nothing like him. He looked Sungmin dead in the eye. Kyung-hoon arrested Jin Suk. He exposed a black market of kidnapped innocents, and reunited families that had given up hope. He is on the road to transforming this kingdom from the hell it had been. He's not a tyrant, he's a savior. But Sungmin's jaw clenched. His voice trembled with a mix of rage and desperation. He is Jang's spawn. He carries that blood. No matter how noble he pretends to be, he was never meant to sit on that throne. This kingdom belongs to my bloodline. Mine. The soldiers fell into an uneasy silence. Sungmin's breathing grew ragged, and he leaned heavier on his cane. His sickness was catching up to him, yet his pride would not allow him to falter. But Hong Jae didn't back down. You're dying, he said bluntly. You won't survive long enough to rule. He took a breath and added the words that made the entire chamber grow still. And Ji Yun, your son, he'll die with Kyung-hoon if we don't step in. Sungmin's face changed. His hand tightened around his cane. No, he said. Ji Yun won't fight. He doesn't even know how. He's safe in the palace. The only one dying today is Kyung-hoon. Just then, the ground shook violently. Dust trickled from the ceiling. A soldier burst into the chamber, his face pale. The wall, the kingdom wall has collapsed. The chamber exploded into noise, gasps, confusion, fear. And Sungmin. He smiled. So faintly. So coldly. The Yin have entered, he muttered. Good. He turned to his army and raised his trembling hand. Get ready. It's almost time. Chaos reigned in the palace. Junho's building, nestled deep within the palace's astronomy department, shook violently as a deafening explosion echoed from afar. Scrolls tumbled from shelves. Glass cracked. Panic swept through the halls like wildfire. People screamed. Guards scrambled. Some fled without looking back. But Junho didn't move, his thoughts were on one person alone. Ji Yun, he whispered, heart racing. Inside the royal quarters, Ji Yun stood solemnly beside Sun He, cradling the newborn in his arms. The baby was warm but weak, breathing softly as if clinging to life itself. But Ji Yun's gaze was distant, his heart pulled in another direction. He handed the baby gently to Sun He. Her eyes filled with panic. Ji Yun, what are you doing? Where are you going? He was already strapping on his armor, face steeled with resolve. The Yin have broken through the kingdom wall, he said calmly, fastening the last piece. I have to go. Sun He's voice trembled. What about the baby? What about you? Ji Yun leaned forward, pressing a kiss on the child's forehead. Keep him safe, he said. Make sure he survives the day. Then he looked at Sun He. Promise me. Sun He nodded, tears in her eyes. Ji Yun turned, drew his sword, and walked out, soldiers falling into formation behind him. As he galloped out of the gates on his horse, dust rising in his trail, a familiar voice cried out behind him. Ji Yun. It was Jun Ho, breathless, having just reached the palace courtyard. He froze when he saw Ji Yun, armor glinting, sword at his hip, leading soldiers like a true warrior. His mouth hung open, but Ji Yun was already far ahead, vanishing into the chaos beyond the gates. Meanwhile, the front line was hell. Kyung Hoon, Tae Jin, and Min Suk fought with everything they had, swords clashing, arrows flying, smoke filling the air. The earth trembled with every explosion. Keep them away from the central village. Kyung Hoon roared. But it wasn't easy. The Yin army, disciplined and ruthless, moved like a machine, cutting down soldiers, launching firebombs, tearing through defenses like paper. Bodies fell around them, friends, brothers, comrades. The battlefield was stained in red. Tae Jin, covered in dirt and blood, looked around at the dying and wounded. His heart clenched. His son was in the palace. His son had no mother now. He couldn't let the child lose a father too. I need to go back, he said urgently to Kyung Hoon. I have to protect my son. Kyung Hoon looked at him and gave a solemn nod. Tae Jin gripped his sword and turned his horse around, charging back toward the palace through the smoke and flames. Back at the front line, Kyung Hoon and Min Suk kept fighting, until suddenly, they were surrounded. From all sides, Commander Yul's forces closed in, sneering as they closed the trap. Commander Yul himself stepped forward, sword drawn, eyes cold. Kyung Hoon, panting and bloodied, stood tall. But even in the heat of danger, he turned to Min Suk. Go. Now. Min Suk's eyes widened. But. Kyung Hoon cut him off. Protect Ji Yun and the baby. Go. That is an order. Min Suk hesitated for only a moment, then with a heavy heart, mounted his horse and galloped back toward the palace, praying he wasn't leaving his king to die. Back in the circle of enemies, Kyung Hoon drew his sword once more. He had no intention of going down without a fight. While chaos consumed the battlefield, Tae Jin raced toward the palace with only one thing on his mind, his son. But what he found when he arrived made his blood run cold. Yin soldiers were already there. They had breached the gates, clashing with the palace guards. Screams rang out, steel clashed against steel, and fire crackled in the distance. Tae Jin wasted no time. Sword in hand, he launched himself into the fray, cutting down Yin soldiers with swift, clean strikes. He moved with purpose, heart pounding in his chest. Then, he saw them. Former King Jiang and the former Queen, fleeing with their remaining guards, panic written across their faces. Tae Jin's eyes widened in surprise. Despite everything, they were trying to survive. But fate was cruel. Yin soldiers descended like vultures, slaughtering their guards before the couple could escape. The swords were raised, and in that moment, it could have ended right there. But Tae Jin intervened. With a powerful war cry, he lunged into the crowd, slicing through the soldiers like a man possessed. The queen gasped in disbelief. Why would Tae Jin save them, after how poorly she had treated him? She once saw him as nothing more than the illegitimate son who might challenge Kyung-hoon's throne. But Tae-jin didn't care about the past. He led them through the palace grounds, trying to find a way out. But before they could get far, they were surrounded. Dozens of Een soldiers poured in from every direction. Tae-jin turned to them. "Go. Now. I'll hold them off." The queen hesitated, her lips trembling. She and King Jang ran as Tae-jin stood alone. And then, the fight began. Tae-jin fought with everything he had. He killed one soldier, then another, and another. But the numbers overwhelmed him. One of them struck, a sword piercing his side, blood spilling across his armor. He staggered. He fell to his knees. As the last soldier approached, Tae-jin raised his sword and ended him. But it was too late. He collapsed beside the fallen enemies, staring up at the sky as the sounds of battle echoed in the distance. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "Min Seo," he whispered. He saw her face in his mind, her smile, her voice, her spirit. He imagined a life they never had. Raising their child in peace. Walking the forest paths. Growing old together. "I should have chosen you. I should have left it all behind," he wept. "Forgive me." He closed his eyes. "Kyung-hoon. Fulfill your dream. Don't let this kingdom fall, and I hope you can survive to take care of my son." And then, he took his last breath. Meanwhile, far from the palace, the battle at the front line had taken a deadly turn. Kyung-hoon was on his knees. Blood dripped from his lips as Commander Yul stood before him, laughing cruelly. The Een soldiers around him sneered, bruising and mocking him. Commander Yul spat on the ground. "Still so proud," he sneered. "You should have bowed when you had the chance. Your kingdom is nothing. Your people are nothing." He kicked Kyung-hoon in the chest, sending him to the dirt. "Kneel. Before your conqueror." But Kyung-hoon, even in agony, glared up at him, defiant. Silent. Refusing. Then. Commander Yul turned sharply. Dust rose like a storm cloud beyond the ridge. From it, thousands of Hwaiyan soldiers emerged, flags raised high. And leading them, a lone rider. Ji-yun. Clad in royal armor, hair tied back, eyes filled with fury and fire, he rode like a vision from legend. His sword gleamed in the sunlight. The wind whipped around him. Kyung-hoon lifted his head and saw him. And in that moment, he smiled. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Ji-yun, his light, his strength, had come. And he hadn't come alone. Commander Yul's face twisted in shock. "What?" Ji-yun raised his sword and bellowed, "For Wayan." The soldiers behind him echoed the cry, shaking the heavens. And with that, the tide of war began to turn. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel for more videos and episodes.